Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX4, and EX4 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be an updated version of the ShineGreymon deck. So ShineGreymon really wanted to adopt a new playstyle focused around Marcus as of BT12, and EX4 offers us lots of new tools to help out with the overall fluidity of that game plan to best support that Marcus. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I am going to be running a red base, and because I'm running a red base, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the BT5 Koromon as one of the primary draw engine Digitamas for the deck. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon X Antibody. So Agumon X Antibody is a really decent card because we are running some X Antibody styled cards on top of running a decent amount of Greymons, which this card is a nice digging or searching tool for, having lots of different ways that we could play this card, whether we're digivolving it in our raising area or we're digivolving it on top of our Agumon. We're still going to be gaining lots of benefits on trying to help it dig out our parts and pieces utilizing this card, while it also is an Agumon that is a dinosaur, which does matter for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Biyomon. So this is the BT11 version of Biyomon, and this is another digging tool for the deck, even though it's not an Agumon and it has almost nothing to do with Agumons as a whole. It is looking for vaccines and it is looking for red tamers, which are 2 things that are very prominent inside of the deck for, making it a really good search engine. On top of the fact that its inheritable ability is still interacting with the fact that we are going to be playing around with tamers, so the 1 memory that it could potentially gain for our Digimon eventually getting deleted could dissuade the opponent and put them off of their own game plan and tempo, or if we're using our cards aggressively, enhance our plays and our tempo. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the brand new EX4 version of Agumon, and it's just another pretty decent card just because while it's sitting passively on the field, when we're going to be playing our tamers, we're going to be gaining some memory, so it's making our tamers cheaper. But we also like its inheritable ability for us drawing cards when we're going to be suspending our tamers, which is what our tamers are going to do themselves anyway. Then on top of that, it is another Agumon that's fitting inside of our colors, where it could digivolve on top of any Koromon, which we do have Koromons in red and yellow, on top of the fact that it is another Agumon that is part dinosaur, which does matter for our level 4s. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT12 version of Agumon, and this is one of the primary digging tools for interacting with our main tamer, which is going to be Marcus, on top of the fact that it also can help grab out our Greymons as well, increasing the consistency of the deck. Then its inheritable ability is actually pretty decent as a nice control tool, where it's just going to give the opponent's Digimon a 2000 DP debuff when our tamers become suspended, which our tamers do have a built-in way to become suspended to trigger this ability. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of GeoGreymon. So this is the Gallantmon starter deck version of GeoGreymon, and even though this isn't the greatest card for us to use, it's still not a bad card for us to use either. We're mostly utilizing it for its name, just because our level 5s do care about GeoGreymons, and this is the best alternative GeoGreymon that we have compared to all of the others. This is still a pretty decent card just because it is a security Digimon, so it can play itself for free if it's checked in the security. Pair that with an on-play ability to help try to delete the opponent's low-level Digimon, and it's still a pretty decent card to use generically. But the more important GeoGreymons are going to be our 2-color GeoGreymons. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the EX4 GeoGreymon. It's doing something very similar to what we just saw with the EX4 Agumon, where it's going to help us gain some memory as a nice passive, and as an inheritable, it'll help us draw a card when our tamers are becoming suspended. Then the important thing with the dinosaur trait on our Agumons is so that way we could use its alternative Digivolution condition to digivolve it a little bit cheaper than it normally would be. And then the most important GeoGreymon that we have in the deck is going to be 4 copies of the BT12 GeoGreymon. So it has that same alternative Digivolution condition, caring about Agumons that are also dinosaurs. Then it has a nice when digivolving ability to help us play a Marcus if we don't already have one, so that way we could try to be as tempo efficient with our cards as we possibly can. Then it even has a nice inheritable ability that's doing something very similar to what the BT12 Agumon is doing, where it's going to be applying a 2000 debuff when our tamers are going to be suspended on one of the opponent's Digimon, which one of the core sub-themes to ShineGreymon is DP reduction onto the opponent's Digimon and potentially their security Digimon. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of the brand new EX4 RizeGreymon. So we care about our level 4s being GeoGreymon, specifically because of its alternative Digivolution condition, again, to try to digivolve it as cheaply and efficiently as we possibly can. Then it has a nice when digivolving ability, where it's going to be debuffing an opponent's Digimon and all of their security Digimon by 4000 DP, so that way our low-level Digimon, and more specifically our tamer, is going to have an easier time swinging into the opponent's security and surviving. Then its inheritable ability is also pretty decent, where it's applying another debuff that we just saw with its when digivolving ability, except the condition isn't attached to when we digivolve. The condition to trigger this ability is when one of our tamers becomes suspended, which, again, our tamers have very easy ways to be able to suspend themselves. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of RizeGreymon X Antibody. So RizeGreymon X Antibody is just still one of the best RizeGreymons that we have, just because it has an alternative Digivolution condition that could digivolve for 1 on top of a RizeGreymon, basically acting like a pseudo level 6, so that way we don't need to run a whole bunch of bad level 6s to still have as much impact as we possibly can, just because this card has a nice powerful when digivolving ability to be able to play one of our tamers for free, on top of the fact that if we digivolved on top of a RizeGreymon, then we're going to be applying a nice big debuff on one of the opponent's Digimon. So the more tamers that we have in play, the stronger this ability becomes at removing one of the opponent's potential threats. Then it also has a nice secondary ability that's going to be helping make this Digimon stronger if we want to be aggressive with this card, where for each tamer we have in play, it's going to get 1000 DP, so again, the more tamers that we have in play, the stronger this card will become. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be the most important RizeGreymon of the deck, and that's going to be 4 copies of the BT12 RizeGreymon. So it has that same special Digivolution condition as we saw with the EX4 RizeGreymon to be able to digivolve it cheaper, on top of the fact that it has a nice when digivolving ability where if we have a red or yellow tamer in play, we're going to be gaining a memory, so this card could already be pretty tempo efficient, digivolving for essentially 2. Then on top of that, it has a nice static ability where during all turns, when one of your tamers becomes deleted, so when your BT12 Marcus attacks and it does delete himself, or if the opponent is trying to delete your tamers and our tamers are a Marcus, then we get to put it from our trash on top of our security stack face down, so he's providing some nice protection for our tamers. Then he has a nice inheritable ability that's doing the exact same thing as his static ability, so as long as we're able to get up into this card, our Marcuses will be well protected. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of ShineGreymon. So this is the BT2 version of ShineGreymon, and even though it's not the most efficient to digivolve into, we have ways to be able to still want to utilize this card. So just for digivolving into this card, it still has one of the best removal abilities that we could have in terms of DP reducing the opponent's field, and it gets stronger the more tamers that we have in play. And then he has a nice secondary ability that's going to be helping boost him up a little bit, where he's going to be able to give himself plus 1000 DP for each tamer that we have in play, acting very similarly to the RizeGreymon X Antibody. But the most important ShineGreymon out of all of the ones that we have is going to be 4 copies of ShineGreymon from BT12. So this is a little bit easier to digivolve into just because it has that special digivolution condition where we get a digivolve cheaper on top of our RizeGreymon named Digimon. This does also work with RizeGreymon X Antibody. Then the reward for digivolving into this card is for each of our red or yellow tamers in play. One of the opponent's Digimon and all of their security Digimon get 3000 DP debuff for the turn. So again, it's making our Digimon and our Marcus safer to swing into the opponent's security, while also trying to DP reduce the opponent's Digimon to clear their field, stacked up with all of the other DP reductions that we could have. And we could separate the DP reductions to various different targets to deal with even wide fields. Then it has a nice ability that's going to be supporting our Marcus, that's going to actually be the one attacking into the opponent's security, where all of our Marcuses in play gain plus 3000 DP and security attack +1. So this is basically a 6000 DP addition to our Marcus, and making our Marcus hit even harder, so our Marcus can try to deal as much damage as safely as it possibly can. And then the last Digimon of the deck, and only level 7, is going to be 2 copies of ShineGreymon Ruin Mode. So ShineGreymon Ruin Mode is a level 7 that we could digivolve a little bit cheaper for digivolving him on top of our ShineGreymons, so that way we could still utilize even our worst of ShineGreymons to be able to make this card as efficient and effective as we possibly can. Then he's just an absolute beast of a card when he hits the field, just because his when digivolving and on delete ability can debuff all of the opponent's Digimon on their field by 5000. This is a fog effect, so it does linger, and if we're able to trigger this ability twice, because the effect isn't limited once per turn, then that could be 10,000 debuff onto the opponent's field that they're going to have to deal with for an entire turn, essentially trying to lock them down and lock them out of their next turn. Then he has an end of attack ability to be able to delete him, so that way you can make the most out of all of his abilities, and when you do delete this Digimon, you get a recover 1, and if we have a tamer, even hatch a Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area, so that way we could try to turbo out our raising area, recover a little bit, and disrupt the opponent all in one card. And then speaking of our tamers, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of Marcus Damon. So this is the BT4 version, and he's just a Marcus to be able to interact with the deck because the deck does care about Marcuses. You could easily run various other tamers in his place to be able to have some good customization and flexibility, but as of right now, the deck really does just want to care about Marcuses, so might as well run a Marcus that's going to be acting as the memory fixing tamer, while potentially giving us some memory when our Greymons are going to be attacking. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the most important tamer in the entire deck, which is going to be the BT12 version of Marcus. So the BT12 version of Marcus, as long as we have an Agumon or Greymon in play, then we get to basically turn this card into a hybrid for only 1 memory to be able to start having a body come out of nowhere and be swinging, even though we can't digivolve on top of him. It doesn't necessarily matter just because of how cheap and efficient this card is. And then not only that, he's making our other cards cheap and efficient to use, because when this tamer becomes suspended, we get a digivolve into a yellow Greymon from our hand for free, which is just really powerful, so that way we could try to have easy and cheap evolutions to be able to accelerate our overall game plan. And then when it comes to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Sunrise Buster. So Sunrise Buster unfortunately is limited to 1, but it's still just a really powerful card for what it's doing, allowing us to be able to set up a red or yellow tamer for free, and then debuff one of the opponent's Digimon by 3000 for each of the red and yellow tamers that we have in play. So again, going along with the theme with our BT2 ShineGreymon and to BT9 RizeGreymon, the more tamers we have on the field, the stronger this type of card and its effect becomes. And then that same sentiment is shared on why I'm going to be running 2 copies of Shining Blast. So it's still trying to DP reduce the opponent's Digimon, but it's also helping set up our tamers, which is really, really important for the deck. And both of our options do have the security ability to activate their main, acting as pretty good security threats in their own right. And then when it comes to the overall game plan and gameplay of the deck, it is for the most part a stereotypical stack-based deck where we're trying to build a really powerful stack in the raising area, try to gain some quick and easy value off of hard playing some specific Digimon, and line up a secondary stack on the field to be able to try to apply some pressure with to efficiently play the game of chicken while being able to set up some of our other cards like our tamers at the same time. So when it comes to what Digimon we're actually going to be utilizing in our raising area, it really doesn't matter what we use. The one that I wouldn't recommend using is probably Biyomon, just because we're actually trying to utilize its on-play ability to be as efficient of a digging tool as we possibly can, and the only card we actually want to Digivolve on top of Biyomon is going to be the old GeoGreymon, just because it's the most efficient at doing that. Otherwise, you're going to be paying a little bit more, which could end up slowing you down unless you have the memory to spare to be able to do those types of plays. But regardless, the Agumons are obviously the best ones in your raising area, and you're probably going to want to focus more so on the red-yellow Agumons in your raising area, just because we could try to take full advantage of them. And then if we want to, that's kind of where Agumon X Antibody becomes super flexible, where if we need to, we could Digivolve it in the raising area just to have an Agumon dinosaur in our raising area for our level 4s, or if we wanted to, we could Digivolve into an Agumon and then still Digivolve it into an Agumon X, or even raise out our Digimon and then Digivolve it into an Agumon X to be able to gain the benefits off of our inheritables as quickly as we possibly can. So between all of our level 3s, we do have some pretty decent flexibility on how we're going to be starting our stack. Then when it comes to our level 4s, we're going to mostly just try to utilize the red-yellow ones because they're the best ones because they help do various things that are actually supporting the deck. And like I said before, the GeoGreymon from the starter deck is in here just as a security threat to be able to use on top of our Biyomon if that situation does come up, or play itself for free, so that way we have some additional pressure out of nowhere that the opponent is then going to have to think about. So the ones that we're going to try focusing on is going to be the red-yellow ones, as I already mentioned before, with the best one being BT12. So just for the sake of this example, I'm just going to be Digivolving it in BT12. The cool thing about the BT12 one is if we have a Digimon just sitting and chilling on our field, this is a really fantastic card to start building our secondary stack with, especially early on, because we want to try to Digivolve it on the field to be able to help set up one of our Marcuses for free while we're still trying to raise a Digimon in the back. So we do have tons of flexibility on how we could Digivolve even into our level 4s and how we want to approach utilizing our level 4s based on what we currently have in our hand. Then when it comes to the level 5s, this is kind of where things get really interesting because it doesn't necessarily matter as much what level 5 we're Digivolving into just because they're all really, really good cards. So the primary one we're going to want to use more often than not, which is why I'm running it at a higher quantity, is going to be the BT12 RizeGreymon just because of the added protection for our Marcuses. But the EX4 one has its own sets of benefits that's also helping support our Marcus by making our Marcus even safer to swing with that debuff towards the opponent's security. So it really doesn't matter which of the RizeGreymons that we're going to be Digivolving into. Again, it just is what you're able to see and how you could best support and utilize the stack that you're trying to build and where your field state is currently in the game. But RizeGreymon X Antibody is a card we could use just as a standalone. It's a little bit less efficient than Digivolving into our RizeGreymons, but the fact that it's still just allowing us to be able to have a really strong level 5 that we could start aggressing with is really, really good. And the icing on the cake is when we pair it up with a RizeGreymon, so that way we could Digivolve him even cheaper and gain even more benefit off of the card. So we could start thinking about doing this all on the field, just because if we do have the BT12 Marcus, then we could use his ability to try to Digivolve into our level 6s as efficiently as we possibly can. And obviously the best level 6 is going to be the BT12 one, just because he is directly supporting our Marcus. But even if we need to Digivolve into the BT2 one, that's still okay, just because we're not actually paying the cost if we're utilizing the Marcus for it. but he's still really important to use to be able to digivolve cheaply into a level 6, so we could try to digivolve into our Ruin mode. And Ruin mode is really good in combination with a lot of our cards as a good level 7, just to try to disrupt the opponent and to put them off of their game plan, while we're able to try to be as aggressive as we possibly can. So the deck does have a pretty cute combo where we could digivolve into the old ShineGreymon, suspend our Marcus, and then digivolve right away into our Ruin mode, which is the intended purpose on how we're trying to utilize the card. And if we have a secondary Marcus from BT12 set up on our field, then we could even swing with our Marcus, be able to use the Marcus's ability to digivolve into our ShineGreymon, then use the ShineGreymon's ability to suspend the secondary BT12 Marcus to still digivolve cheaply into our ShineGreymon Ruin mode, which we then can swing right away with, have him get deleted, and gain full benefit and value off of the card, just as a quick example. And it is important to understand what the core or foundation of the deck is trying to do before you start customizing it and editing it to fit your own playstyle and preferences. So I do like utilizing a red base over a yellow base just because Agumon X Antibody is one of the few Agumons that is part dinosaur, on top of the fact that it does just have some pretty decent synergy with a lot of our other cards, like trying to dig out our other X Antibody cards on top of our Greymons. But the deck is more focused on utilizing a lot of our 2-color cards, because those are the ones that are going to be interacting with our BT12 Marcus, which is the most important card in the entire deck, because that's what everything is trying to support and be centered around. So here is just a quick little 40 card core for you to start working with. And then we still have a whole bunch of other tech and tools that we could think about incorporating into the deck, all depending on what you actually want to gain out of the deck. So I prefer the red base, but you could actually think about utilizing a yellow base, just because we do have a pretty good yellow Koromon that's interacting with wanting to utilize our red and yellow tamers. And we even have some cute alternative tech cards like Armadillomon that's just looking for 2-color cards that are part yellow. But when it comes to the other Agumons, we do have a slew of different Agumons that we could run. Most of them aren't dinosaur and they are reptile, but we do have a few that are part dinosaur. Then we do have some memory boosts we could think about running to try to up the overall consistency, like red memory boost or yellow memory boost, depending on your core and preferences. And we even have some alternative tamers that we could run, again, depending on what you're trying to support, where we could run something like Cody or Yoli, just because they're interacting with a 2-color Digimon. And we could even take that Armadillomon sentiment and share that same type of mentality to think about utilizing Hawkmon as well. Then we do have some other generic Greymon tech that we could think about running. I'm not super fond of running some of the generic Greymon techs, but because they're all still Greymons, we do have a decent wide amount of flexibility that we could utilize them with. Then we do have a yellow GeoGreymon we could think about utilizing. It's not the greatest, but it is a GeoGreymon. Then we do have some hybrids that we could run because, of course, we're a tamer-based deck, and hybrids are always just really good generic filler cards for us to use as good alternative win conditions, or a way to be able to climb up our stages out of nowhere. Then, speaking of climbing up our stages, we do have 2 other RizeGreymons that we can incorporate that are helping set up our tamers. So we do have a RizeGreymon from BT4 with the Digiburst ability, and we even have RizeGreymon from BT2 with his When Digivolving ability. Then, if you do just care about the ShineGreymon name, just to try to run some extra level 6s in the deck, we do have 2 other ShineGreymons that are pretty decent. Then we do have some pretty good generic options in both red and yellow to be able to help flesh out some of the deck's weaknesses in terms of the removal and different types of utility that we're looking to gain. Then we do have some other tamers that we could think about incorporating into the deck. If you want to not play the BT4 Marcus, we do have Tai and Kari as a good 2-color card that's fitting within our color combination, while also trying to debuff the opponent's security, making it even easier for our Marcus to be able to deal some damage with some pretty decent memory generation for us and the opponent having a low security count. And then if you are just wanting to run a really good generic tamer, TK is one of the better ones to try to up the overall consistency by allowing us to have ways to be able to add cards from our security back into our hand, like when our Marcus goes into our security off of our BT12 RizeGreymon, just as an example. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.